Hi, my name is Yaz,
My name's Riaz.
and today we'd like to talk about Brexit. More specifically, is there any chance of turning Brexit back? And things along that line. So recently in the media, there's been a lot of talk with Nigel Farage coming out and saying Brexit isn't necessarily having to go forward. There is chances for a second referendum if the people of Britain want it. And there's been a lot of talk by Remainers who are saying, we want a second referendum. We feel entitled to a second referendum. But obviously, we've had the first referendum, and there was also that where the majority of the voting population wanted to leave the EU. What's your opinions on what I've said so far, and if we should be allowed to reverse the decision, or should our democratic decision stand?
I think there's a few things you have to consider before answering that question, because the vote for Brexit was very close. The percentage was just past half, and so that means the country was very split on this decision. So you could argue, because the difference was so close, maybe we should get a re-vote. However, I feel like if we would re-vote on this, it would be maybe an attack on our law and all the votes that have been passed. I mean, should we just re-vote on everything when some people are not happy with it?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the point of having a democracy and a judgment and a vote if it just can be overturned in a bit later?
Yeah. So, what I think when it comes to this is that if the vote had been to Remain and Remain had won, no matter by how slim a margin, I'm a Remainer, so I would have said there should never be another chance of a second referendum. This is the vote that we held. But now we're thinking, because there's a lot of Remainers, and we're thinking now maybe people have realised how bad Brexit potentially could be. They didn't know all the facts before, and during the referendum there was a lot of campaigning which was inappropriate, which wasn't, we weren't making sure that the sources the information was coming from were true. So maybe there was potential for people to be misinfluenced, and now potentially have seen the light and want to change their decision. But if we like you said, if we let there be a second referendum here, who's to say that any decision or vote we have in the future should mean anything? Really, we're making democracy bend to our whim.
And exactly what you said, really. But I guess with these things, it's okay for things to change and to have re-vote if there is a substantial difference in a potential next vote and in a difference in thinking. So if it could be argued that you've introduced studies and you've given leaflets to people, and that the government had noticed a change in people's ideas about Brexit, whether they wanted it, and let's say that 55% just went down to 20%.
Yeah.
And then it could be argued then the people's ideas and mindsets has changed, and it's worth doing a re-vote.
Yeah, I guess with Brexit there's a lot of unknowns, and we were kind of all shocked by the first result. If you think if the UK voted again today, how do you think they would vote? Do you think they'd vote any differently?
I think they would. A lot of people were told that the NHS would receive a large sum of money, which
never really materialised.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people were just unhappy with the way the government were running the country, and they kind of used this as a hope for change. And I think people will start to see that not a lot of changes in positive changes are going to be seen in the next 10, 20 years, 30 years. And Brexit, I believe, can be maybe beneficial in the end, but there's going to be a very long period of a lot of negative changes in society before that happens.
Yeah. So actually, I was reading a study that broke down the voter base, the demographics for the Remain and for the Leave, and what you had found was the average age of the Leave voter tended to be a lot higher, and among certain demographics, at the top of the age ranges, a lot of them were voting to leave. A lot of people are arguing that the people who in the biggest percentage voted to leave are the people who aren't going to have to deal with the effects of Brexit, because to put it in a nice way, they will have passed on. And we, the younger generation, who in majority voted to Remain, are gonna have to be the people who deal with the long-term consequences of Brexit, a Brexit that we didn't vote for. Does that influence, things at all when you think about a second referendum coming into practice?
I guess you could argue that case, but the elderly population, whether they're going to be here for a long time or not, they're still a large part of our society in this day.
Yeah.
So they do have a right to take part in the vote and decide the future of this country.
Yeah.
Maybe be better for, or for what wrong. That's the whole point of a democracy.
Yeah.
But I can understand that, the elderly were maybe more likely to be patriotic, and they were thinking that UK's history as a strong country,
Sovereign nation, yeah.
and they didn't like it seeing direction, but they must have to understand that at the rate this country is going, we're a small island now. We don't have a lot of power. Scotland has many times tried to split from us, and it will if it feels it's got more benefits without us.
Yeah.
So we're going to become an even smaller island, and so I think the elderly, some of the elderly have to get out of the notion that we can be great when we're quite a struggling country. We don't produce a lot of goods except for
tertiary services.
Exactly, except for banking and investment,
Finance and whatnot. Yeah. So I think when it comes to that, you could be right. You could also be wrong, but it's important to look at things, look at all the facts put down, which I don't think we had in the first referendum. People weren't provided with all the facts, all the statistics. Random numbers were being thrown around, and there was a bit of fear-mongering, I'd have to say, on both sides. If you'd made the argument for Brexit to me in a logical, reasonable way with evidence and it had been backed up, it would have been a tough choice for me. But the way that the referendum was run, it was pretty much run by the media and run by the scaremongers, and that's why I feel people didn't really get a fair chance to hear all the facts and make an informed decision.
And I think even now we still don't know the facts. We still don't know what Brexit is doing to our country.
Yeah.
What's the consequences? Which company's going to leave? Which company's going to stay? There's a lot of uncertainty, and we still don't know really.
The problem is, though, this is always going to be uncertainty because Brexit is pretty much the unknown. You're kind of choosing between the devil you know and the devil you don't. Now, there's a chance that Brexit could end horribly for our country, or there's a chance that it could bring about some positive changes. But what I think the most important thing for me is that that's not what people were voting on. People were voting on a platform of fear, and a platform of hate, and a platform of, a lot of the time, ignorance. I don't want to say the entire populace was uneducated, because that wouldn't be true. Who am I to say that? But large amounts of the population voted for reasons that they probably couldn't even tell you, and a lot of people were they found it very difficult to choose. They were very, stricken between the two choices. So, having said that, could we go back to any other any other votes we've had in the past, and any other referendums and every other elections, and start questioning those if we start questioning this?
I mean, I guess with those elections and those votes, you could argue that they won't have such an impact as Brexit does. Brexit is the most important thing in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And after it's started, it won't be changed very soon at all.
Yeah. Because once we start the changes required for Brexit, it's going to be very hard to go back. If there ever was a time to change, it would be right here, right now, before anything happens.
Exactly, and there's a lot of risks involved with Brexit. I mean, our law, which is based on European law, could be changed, which could affect many people.
Yeah.
And a lot of stability could be affected.
Yeah.
Our ability to go to work in European countries would be affected. So it's not just financial negative points. There's a lot of things we could possibly lose with Brexit.
Yeah.
So I think it is important, and seeing as it's such an important time and vote, maybe we should consider revoting before we start it.
Yeah. So if we did revote and the numbers were simply reversed, let's say it was 52 for Remain and 48 for Leave, would that call for a third vote even at that point? Who's to say that the UK is going to be any more decided now than it was back then?
True.
And referendums are not cheap, they're costly. People run huge campaigns, and there's a lot of administrative work that has to go into it.
Of course. Let me give you a situation. You're a patient, and maybe you've got cancer, but before you make a decision to have cancer therapy, chemotherapy, or to go with you are told the risks, the consequences involved, and you're able to make an informed decision. With the Brexit, no one really knew the facts. The campaign was based on falsehoods.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that we should ask for a revote when we are able to make an informed decision, each and every individual.
Yeah. So you're saying you're for a revote, basically. You're for a second referendum.
I would, yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with you. I said I'm also for a second referendum. Thanks for listening. You guys let us know what's your opinions. Would you vote for a second referendum, or would you like a second referendum or not? Thanks very much.
Thank you.